The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has been broken after less than 4 weeks. Israel says it has attacked Hamas armed compounds in the Gaza Strip after incendiary balloons were launched from the Palestinian territory on Tuesday. It's the first test for Israel's new government, which was sworn in on Sunday. Courtney Bembridge reports.
An Israeli airstrike once again lit up the night sky in Gaza. This was the view from above. It's the first major flare-up in almost a month after 11 days of fighting ended in a ceasefire. There have been no reports of casualties in the latest incidents. The BBC's correspondent in Gaza said Israeli drones could be heard overhead just after midnight.
The sound of bombs and also the sound of Israeli military drones flying over Gaza was creating some sort of panic and fear for the 2 million people in Gaza. They have just trying to recover from the 11 days of fighting.
And this is why Israel said it launched airstrikes against Hamas targets, incendiary balloons sent by Hamas from Gaza into southern Israel, causing multiple fires. Earlier, thousands of far-right Israeli protesters paraded in East Jerusalem. Hamas had warned that if the event went ahead, it would be seen as a provocation. It comes just 2 days after former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was ousted after 12 years in power. He was toppled by an ideologically divided coalition, including for the first time in Israel's history, an Arab party. The centrist politician who built the new governing coalition, Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, condemned the parade and said, "It is inconceivable how one can hold the Israeli flag in one hand and shout death to the Arabs at the same time. These people are a disgrace to the people of Israel." His political partner, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, a right-wing nationalist, promised to unite the nation only 1 day ago. Courtney Bembridge, BBC News.
Now we begin looking at the 26 fires that were started in southern Israel yesterday from incendiary devices flown out of Gaza. And Israel's nascent government ordered the IDF to carry out a series of airstrikes overnight in the Gaza Strip. The army says it struck quote-unquote terror sites of Hamas and Khan Yunis and Gaza City. Palestinian reports say no one was injured. Significantly, the day provided the first major security test for Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who took over just Sunday as premier. The Yamina party leader has long insisted that the IDF's response to arson attacks should be the same as it is for rocket fire. The spate of incendiary balloons yesterday was seen as a response to the nationalistic so-called flag march, attended by several thousand people in Jerusalem's Old City. The controversial event this year produced some ugly scenes, however, with groups of far-right Israelis even chanting death to Arabs at points, leading to alternate Prime Minister Yair Lapid to react, tweeting, quote, "It's inconceivable how one can hold the Israeli flag in one hand and shout death to Arabs at the same time. This is neither Judaism nor Israeliness, and that is certainly not what our flag symbolizes. These people are a disgrace to the people of Israel," close quote. Now, the march was rescheduled from Jerusalem Day, May 10th, when it was cut short by Hamas rocket fire that targeted the city, set off 11 days of fighting between Israel and Palestinian terror groups in the Gaza Strip. Now we go to our correspondent, Ariel Levine-Waldman, on the Gaza border this morning here after yesterday. Obviously, all eyes down there. What's the status along the border this morning, Ariel? Any special security alerts or bolstered forces? What's expected?
Well, the expectation from everybody in the area seems to be that not much is going to happen. We spoke to some of the locals in the area, and they said arson, the sort that left the entire field around me scorched black, is almost a fact of the weather here. Partly cloudy with a chance of burning. They say it's just that normal, and nobody really considers it a major security issue. And in fact, it seems that both sides are treating this as a series of tit-for-tat measured responses designed to show that they are ready to do something something without actually doing anything. Remember, Hamas has been trying to claim that they have jurisdiction over Jerusalem, and in a sense that backed them into the corner. The march went ahead almost as planned in Jerusalem, and Hamas realizes they have to do something. So they send out some balloons, which generally cause a little bit of property damage, a little bit of fires. They force Israel to respond, but they don't actually do any real harm that would force an escalation. Israel responds by saying that they're going to operate the same way they would against a rocket, and they launch an airstrike. That airstrike hits an empty building. There's no injuries, and both sides get to go home and tell their people that they're doing something, while not actually doing much of anything. So right now, the general thought is no escalation is likely to happen. With that in mind, security plans have been made, and military leaders did present Bennett and the new government with a series of plans and operating schedules that they could use in the case of escalation, meaning that while everyone seems to be willing to play for now at nothing happening, they are ready in case anything does.
And that all-important aspect of the local residents down there, Ariel, that you touch on, that so used to this for nearly 20 years at this point now, coming these types of provocations out of the Gaza Strip. You mentioned they're somewhat resigned to this, but what about the specter of rocket fire, which didn't materialize yet? Is that still something looming over their heads, literally?
In a sense, that's always something looming over their heads because they never know when it's going to happen. The moment that Hamas wants to start something, they say that they're effectively dancing to the enemy's tune, which means that it's the enemy controlling their lives and not Israel's government. With that said, they're not expecting anything to happen, at least not this quickly. Both sides recognize that nobody wants an escalation right now. For Israel's side, it was a massive optics disaster, and from Hamas's side, frankly, they lost a lot of people and they lost a great deal of infrastructure. Not enough to set them back significantly, but enough to realize that there is a cost to operating against Israel. And frankly, what they consider the provocation in Jerusalem, or in this case, just a march in Jerusalem, doesn't rise to the level that they want to see more airstrikes and possible operations on that side of the border. And that knowledge is keeping the people living around the border fairly secure that they're not going to be seeing rockets, at least not just yet.
And certainly the new government being tested as it is in Israel. We'll discuss more in the hours to come. Ariel Levine-Waldman coming to us from the Gaza border this morning.